Welcome. I'd like to call to order the our regular board meeting of the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority. It's Monday, July 23rd. May I have a roll call of commissioners, please?
Chair Jones,
Present.
Commissioner Bellany, Commissioner Oliver,
Here.
Commissioner Osteen,
Here.
Commissioner Rector, Commissioner Slaughter,
Here.
Commissioner Talbert.
Thank you. First, would like to have our moment of silence. If we can just call for a brief moment. Thank you. Before public comments, I want to take a brief moment to welcome our newest commissioner, Ms. Carolyn Slaughter.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have you with us. And thank you for volunteering for this service. And I would like to send well wishes to our Commissioner Retker, who is home healing and might miss a few meetings. She was in a car accident, but is going to be just fine, just not able to make it tonight. So thank you all so much for your thoughts for Ms. Retker. With that, we have time for public comments now. Are there any comments this evening? All right, Ms. Wilcox.
Good evening. My name is Annette Wilcox. I'm currently at 1400 Monticello Road at apartment 102 in Charlottesville, Virginia. As I explained once before, and I don't like to make the if I have any concerns about how many apartment use it for low income residents, for people who have retired and disabled, not just for working people. I should get information from Tamika Grooms, who is by Section 8 Housing, who will be my Section 8 Housing Income Choice Specialist next year. If I surprisingly see yes, it's nice to see some cute new changes going on, which I see on Carlton Avenue at the Belmont Station. I'm pretty certain you explained to me that they're going to start the in 2019 or in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I said I'd read about it at the Charlottesville ad. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Excuse me for saying bye.
Not at all. It's nice to see you. Thank you for your comments.
I'll speak to you later. I didn't say goodbye.
Good.
Looks like I'm gonna have to get the ball rolling because nobody wants to talk. Connie Rosenbaum, city resident. Y'all know where I live, so I'm not gonna give my address out. They did work at West Haven Saturday. Did a very good job. They stopped about 2 o'clock. Elderly section, the only thing they got weed eated was my yard for the first time in 4 weeks. My yard, Richard weed eated my yard, and he actually went around it, trimmed it, and like he was supposed to. For the first time all summer long, my front yard looks decent. But you've got to remember, we've got 2 parts of the elderly section that hasn't been done and nothing's been taken care of. The back hill hasn't been taken care of. The grass is still high. I'm still having intern problems, and I'm running out of glue traps, which the man's supposed to come Wednesday, I believe. Also, the maintenance men was cussing each other the other day, and I do mean they were throwing the F-bomb out like you wouldn't believe. I was sitting in the chair in the living room, and I got up and looked out to see who it was, and I can tell you who it was. Y'all probably already know. So, but I'm not the only one that has complained. There was another woman that was supposed to come with me tonight, and she's done fed up with everything. She said she wasn't even coming. But if we don't speak up and speak out, nothing's going to get done. And the maintenance people are smoking in the vehicles. If we're not allowed, I don't smoke, but if they're not allowed to smoke in their apartments or whatever, the maintenance people shouldn't be allowed to smoke in the brand new vehicles. But when they're getting out there cussing each other and throwing the F word around, especially down there where there's little kids and everybody else can hear it, it's not like the kids over there don't throw the F-bombs, because every time they get up on the roof over at the nursing clinic, there's 3 or 4 of us have to holler and tell them to get off the roof or we're going to call the police. And we get cussed every time, but we're used to that. But y'all have got to do something to the elderly section. When I first moved there 6 years ago, I was told by 2 different property managers, Crescent Hall and the elderly section on Hardy Drive always come first to get everything done, instead of working their way down at Run Street and working their way up. By the time they start at Run Street, it's about 4 o'clock by the time they get to our section. They might not get to our section for 2 more weeks, and that's not right. I mean, I heard there's other people on Hardy Drive that's also having problems with black snakes in their yards. But if they don't keep their yards mowed, yeah, they're going to have black snakes and stuff in their yards. But the elderly section, we can't get out there and mow. So something needs to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's open for public comment. Yes, ma'am.
Well, my name is Gloria Beard. I was here at the last meeting. And I just need some answers so I can get my mind straight. I seen on Facebook that the community got together and gave these people at Crescent Hall some fans. Now, if everything is okay down there, why do they need fans? I'm not sure what's going on, because people know, I know when I'm hot or cold. Now, if I don't have the sufficient air, then I can't breathe well. And then they did a cleanup at Hardy Drive. I don't know if this was right or wrong, but I thought it was a good deal, because I goes down there. Connie just left. She's a good friend of mine, and Rosia. So I go there a lot, and I see the wrong, what's going on. She's right about those men that cutting the grass. If I hired them to come cut my grass, guess what? I'd be looking for somebody else. They have cut the grass, and I'm an outsider, and I can see that. And I'm not just complaining. I just don't understand what's going on. People don't take pride in their jobs anymore, it seems to me. I'm from the old school. I don't care what kind of job I had in my life. I did it well. And I'm just concerned about these low-income people, because I was in low income for 11 years, Garrett Square. So I know what can happen. And why are these people so overlooked? Just because you're poor, you shouldn't be punished. I'm still poor, but thank God I was able to work all my life, and I got out of that. I bought a home. But some people will never be able. They don't pay us any money in this town unless you are a professional. And I know I retired from UVA. So something got to give. And I made a suggestion to one of my friends on Facebook. I'm willing to do an organization to gather things for people in need. I would work hard. And I got so much stuff in my house, my son would be glad if I gave it away. But, we got to do something for each other, because I don't like it. And it bothers me, too, about the gentrification. I'm not getting no good answers. I'm worried. Not because I don't have nowhere to go. I have 3 sons and 8 grandchildren. But some of these people won't be able to move and live comfortably if they don't have no transportation. What are they doing to us? And my taxes went up this year. So now they got this project they're working in up there on, was it Preston or Grady Avenue? My tax is going to go up. Now, I know I might qualify for some help because I'm a senior and I'm disabled, but some people won't. What's the plan? Why are they moving us out? And who's giving all this, I mean, who's agreeing to all this? They can't take our neighborhoods and bring in the rich people, charging one-bedroom apartment for $1,000. Who makes that kind of money and trying to feed children and do whatever? I'm concerned about this town. Not about me, because God is good. I believe in the Lord. And God's always said, you're supposed to, demand justice for his people. And I believe in the Lord wholeheartedly. So I know it's my mission. Whatever happens, I tell my kids all the time, one day if you don't see me, maybe you go in the backyard, it might be hanging from the tree. Thank you. Think about it, you all. It's getting worse and worse, not better.
Good evening, Nancy Carpenter. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the board. One administrative question I have, and I've never been able to get a good answer. Why is there no agenda pre-published on the Housing Authority's website or the board minutes so that people who are interested and want to know what's been going on can find out what's been talked about in the past, who feels a certain way on certain issues when it regards public housing? For years, that has been a problem. I don't know if it remains with someone in the city of Charlottesville or whether it's someone who's tasked through CRHA, but it certainly would be beneficial to be able to read if you want to go to a meeting but can't, but want to pick up and stay current, because public housing will be so important to this city, and we all know that the federal government gives less and less money to public housing for a lot of different areas, which is disgusting, but there is a way of advocating for that in the federal sphere. The other question I want to say is that I want to thank the community people who stepped up and wanted to offer their time and their equipment and their services to help folks do some basic maintenance, landscape maintenance. There again, I'm questioning where does that task really fall to, and why? Is it that if the public housing developments have a playground for the kids, why do we allow the weeds and everything to grow up? Doesn't always happen with any of the other parks and rec facilities that I see in town, and of course they're maintained by a different city department. But it would be nice if that would be nice, because I'm a renter. I don't have space for yard equipment. I mean, I have a small pair of pruning shears, and that's about it in my apartment. Okay, we have our bushes there that need to be taken care of. So you don't always have the wherewithal to house something in your apartment or the money to house something. So hopefully that this exercise that occurred this past Saturday will allow the administration here to perhaps reevaluate the tasks, relook at what people do, so that our public housing units landscape can look lovely. Or they should. Everybody should have a place that's looks nice outside and inside and all around. They shouldn't have to worry about fans for air conditioning again. And thank goodness that the community stepped up for that, because I don't think the staff there at that facility seemed capable of being able to address that concern or how to address that concern. That's probably something that should be talked about within the staff meetings, however they occur. But I do thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Deborah Booker, President of the Tenants Association at Crescent Halls. Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to first of all give an update on the fan situation. We've handed out about 30 fans. I have a few more for people who are in need, and they were handed out because people's air conditioning wasn't working or wasn't working properly. So that gives people a way to kind of hold on and bear it until something better happens. And I want to thank everyone in the community who came forward and helped with that also. Also, I asked for some help in getting the Tenant Association together, because a lot of stuff has been going on that the residents disagree with. A lot of working against me as president of the Tenant Association rather than supporting me. And I'd like to thank the ones who stepped in and are helped to support us in getting that straight. We had a really good meeting last month, and I think we had a better turnout of residents than we had for a long time. And I'd just like to say I hope more of you all get interested and involved in what's going on with FAR and the residents at Crescent Halls. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Goes to you. I'm Brandon. I work for the Public Housing Association of Residents, the duly elected, duly recognized Resident Advisory Council and Resident Advisory Board for all residents of public housing in Charlottesville. And I actually had the opportunity to email these comments to you just a little bit ago, so you probably haven't read them, and it's a lot of comments.
An hour ago.
An hour ago.
I read them.
And I think they're actually pretty solid. I'll try to paraphrase because I don't want to talk all night, though I could. So the first thing, there's a bullet list here of just a couple of things that I think would be really great for the public to hear this evening, just some updates, and maybe that was already being planned on being discussed, but it would be great to just get an update on these things. The situation with the trees at West Haven, what's going on with that, as well as how y'all have been handling replacement housing and repair those homes. Would love to see, since there's a new committee and that committee met, would love to see on an agenda in the future a report back from the Maintenance Advisory Committee. I think that was a super positive meeting that happened a couple weeks back. So it would be great to get kind of an update on that. Would very much like to hear about staffing situation. Would love to hear as much information as possible about preparation and communication about the August 12th weekend. And I think if somebody can give some kind of report back from the meeting with security that happened at Crescent Halls, that would be pretty good for everybody to hear what happened at that meeting. I'm actually going to skip ahead since some folks mentioned these things a moment ago. I'm going to skip ahead to customer service and maintenance. So as I said, we'd love to hear about staffing and movements toward the call center, which I believe you had slated for August 1st. And a report back from the Maintenance Advisory Committee. On the call center, I'm a little concerned that you're probably not quite ready to do that. So hopefully when all the ducks are in a row, you can get that out there and it'll make a huge impact. But certainly if that's not the case, let's make sure it works right. So back to Maintenance Advisory Committee, one issue that was particularly interesting was a conversation about the proper pairing of maintenance techs with jobs that fit their skills. You've got folks who can do different things, and sometimes the person who knows how to repair a stove, for example, doesn't need to be the person who's going out sweeping up afterwards or doing some other task. And similarly, we began discussing lawn care and landscaping. And this has been something that FAR has been pushing on for a number of months, which is your staff is spending too much time on the landscaping. They're not doing a great job of it, and what's happening is that they're unable to get into homes and repair homes, turn units, and fill vacancies. So they're spending time doing a job that they just can't keep up with. So we suggested contracting for landscaping for the housing authority like you used to do. There was a maintenance guy who said what used to happen is actually you had one maintenance guy and that was his job. He did all the landscaping and that worked well. But things are at such a point where doing that right now is not really something you can reach. So there was also discussion of could you do a one-time contract, get everything up to a certain level, and then restructure the staff to have that happen. So I think in any event, we do need to address landscaping, but we really need to address what's going on inside people's apartments. And I think there's a couple other things that are going to help with that. So we also discussed the need for a comprehensive review of the maintenance needs of all the homes in CRHA and kind of line those up in the different boxes. What's going to head towards redevelopment, what needs modernization, what needs rehab, what just needs basic maintenance, and sort of setting up a schedule. And I think everybody is into that idea. I know there was some discussion and some help with trying to get that going, but it faced a lot of challenges. So hopefully that challenge can get worked through sooner than later. But I think that was a great conversation. Ultimately, we deeply urge you to move forward with staffing a facilities manager and a lead program manager as soon as possible. I know those things are on the street. Get those folks in, get them hired, pay them well, get really top-level management positions in here to really get things under control. You combine that with the call center model and perhaps some changes to both the HCV system, the computer system, that will also benefit the public housing program computer system. I think that's going to make a big impact, and I'm glad to see we're moving that direction. As far as the substantial rehabs, looks like 2 are almost ready at 6th Street, followed by another 2 at 6th Street pretty soon after that. That's exciting. That means there's rapid movement on the rest, so we would like to see that shift to West Haven where the need is pretty great for the substantial rehabs as soon as possible. All right, so I'll go back to the back. I know I'm talking a lot. The bond. Tonight you're going to discuss a bond, and I hope the public can understand this. The Housing Authority is going to ask for the city to float a bond of, I believe, $50 million to get started. And I think the city is going to seriously consider this. I just want you to know that FAR definitely supports this. This is the kind of money that can have a huge impact on this community, make sure we move into the future and provide resident-directed redevelopment. So FAR definitely supports the resolution you're going to support tonight. And we are also prepared to support this directly to the City Council and advocate for that. And I think you will find the broader public in Charlottesville can be motivated to also support this. I think it's in your best interest to support whatever things that can be done to tell the city, here's how you could finance that bond. Here's how you can pay for the debt. I think that's just a good faith thing. It's really up to the city to figure that out. But if you all can be supportive of what they come up with, I think that's going to be helpful. The rest, I'll just let you kind of read the rest. HCV, I do need to get into. So we're really glad that admin plan is moving forward. Been talking about this for 6 years. Finally got it underway. We're really excited that you partnered with Harrisonburg. I think they've done a pretty good job. FAR and Legal Aid are going to need to offer some comments about the plan. Almost everything that you've put in there is pretty beneficial to people and to the community. We do have a deep concern about the preferences system as relates to working families, in that it could be a fair housing violation because, as we know, formerly incarcerated individuals are not a protected class, but race is a protected class, and what HUD has determined and others is that because of mass incarceration and a racist imprisonment system, that those who are formerly incarcerated are victims of racism and should not be discriminated. In fact, there should be proactive measures to include people who are formerly incarcerated. So those formerly incarcerated people face huge barriers to employment. And so that's a fair housing violation, in our opinion. I think we can outline that. And as well, I think that will also impact single mothers who can't work for a variety of reasons, and I think that's also a fair housing violation. But we'll offer comments about that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments at this time? You have to wait till the end. You already went. Thank you. Sorry. If there aren't other comments now, we have a brief time for questions and comments from commissioners.
I guess I would comment about security at Crescent Halls. Our last meeting, we discussed the need to kind of have a coming together on issues there. And I guess I'd love to kind of report back, first of all, that Commissioner Slaughter really hit the ground running. She ran that meeting and was excellent input throughout, so that was wonderful. But we were able to address issues kind of on both sides of the table, from the security perspective and from people who are have been offended or worse by security. Kind of heard both sides of the story. I tell you, I really came away feeling like security is really doing an outstanding job, considering it's a very, very challenging environment, and we're trying to work through some bugs to get up and running. There were two kind of potentially egregious situations that were particularly talked about, and we couldn't get to the bottom of them quite as much as we might have liked, only because both of the two offending parties for the security company no longer work there. That was their recourse, was pretty immediate action, which I think it'd be nice to resolve these things, but at the same time, they took very proactive measures to see that issue was resolved as completely as possible. I know it's something we will continue to work for, but I think we all got to be on the same page and try to find common ground on that, because the idea of security on that site is for protection of our residents, and that really needs to be number one. And then beyond that, we'll need to see what hurdles there are. But I thought it was a very good meeting.
Great. Thank you.
And I agree with you. I think that was a great meeting. It needed to happen, and I'm glad it happened. I also feel that there are other meetings that need to happen, and that those meetings need to be a part of the Housing Authority, the City Police, and Meridian. And we might need to be looking at putting Meridian on all the sites, because all the sites right now are dealing with things that's going on outside of the unit. We have a lease for those who live in the units, but what's going on the sites, on the grounds, needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with ASAP. We cannot continue to play around with this. It needs to happen. So I'm going to ask the board tonight to make sure that a meeting is set up so that we all, and this board needs to be a part of the meeting, because you need to hear what's going on the sites. Mr. Duffield and Ms. Mason had experience at what happens on the sites this past weekend, and it was not in the best interest for them to be out there in the situation that they were put in. And I don't want to see any more staff have to be put in that situation. So at this point, if we don't want cameras, then we need securities. And right now, I wasn't supportive of the cameras, but right now, with what's going on these properties, I'm ready to say, yeah, put them in.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Oliver. I will say we have Sergeant Haney here from the police department, who's going to answer some of our questions around security and some of the things brought up in Forrest's comments. If you all are ready, we could invite him up, or if we have other comments. Just seems like an opportune time, if that's all right with you. So,
Good evening, board members.
good evening. Thanks for being here.
I'm good.
So,
Absolutely.
I don't know if you have any general comments you want to make, or if you just.
Nope, I'm gonna open up the floor to you all.
Well, we had, I guess Ms. Oliver has sort of questions and concerns about safety and security, Crescent Halls and beyond. And then I think as a board, we asked you here also to speak briefly about preparations for August 12th, and we can talk about our preparations for that weekend.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Oliver.
So I'm just at the point right now, and I know that I've talked to you this weekend, and that you thank you for what you did. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
But my biggest concern is that I think that we're at the point right now where we need to be meeting with the police department and with Meridian, because we need to figure out what you all are going to be allowed to do when you come on the properties, or what you're allowed to do, or what you all can do to help us control what is going on the outside of the units. Because like I said, we got leases for those who live in the units. But it's what's going on the outside that we have to deal with. And I just feel like we're at the point where we all need to sit down and meet and talk about what needs to happen.
No, and I think you bring up a great point because last year when we went around to the different properties, we kind of spoke openly about some of the issues. And I know one thing that we've tried to do this year since those meetings is one of the concerns is more outreach programs. We've tried to bring, some ice cream at the cop. We're trying some, some other initiatives, but actually going door to door and literally trying to speak with everyone on these properties and find out what the issues are. And, I'll tell you, when I got that phone call from Grant the other night, I didn't know a thing about it. And we were out there that day for a community event speaking with individuals. And as soon as he brought that up, I put some things in motion and I tried to have some individuals over there immediately to deal with that situation. So it's pretty much, we're out there and we're trying to speak with the residents, but I don't know if some residents feel comfortable. And that's something that, I take issue with because I want everybody to feel comfortable coming to us.
So, and that's issues that we need to deal with. I don't know if, I know we had a line before where people could call and anonymously, calls, but there are residents that we need to put a line or something there to make that where folks are comfortable making these calls. Because they come to my phone. They started at my phone early Saturday morning, late Friday night. They and was going the whole time. So they come to my phone. And they go and they went directly to Julie. What I got, I sent to Julie. What I got, I sent to Grant. So, they come, but we need to figure out how we get residents, because residents are tired of this. They're tired of people coming and disrespecting us. Public housing is not wide open country. It's private property, and it needs to be treated like private property. And that's the way we're going to start treating it.
So for those of us who aren't aware, can we elaborate on what happened? Because I was out of town this weekend, so I guess I'm out the loop.
So we received, I received a phone call from Mr. Duffield in reference to a party that had been spread over Facebook on South First Street.
For Denny Day.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So we heard about that, and Ms. Oliver reached out to Mr. Duffield and said that she had been getting complaints from residents. So as soon as we found out about it, I spoke with an evening shift supervisor just to make him aware of the situation and possible individuals coming in that maybe do not live in that area, and the concerns of Ms. Oliver and other residents. I don't think there were anything that arose out of that party, and it was taken care of, but it was just the information getting out there, because we were there. It's funny, we were there for 2 hours the day of, and we didn't hear any concerns, speaking with residents. So, and that's something, I want that open dialogue, especially with the officers that work in the area.
Yeah. So a lot of residents attended the party, because it was for Denzel who passed away. So I'm missing the issue.
There were totally violations. There were violations all over the place.
What kind of violation?
All kind. All kind.
Can dis-
And if we want to discuss that later, we can discuss that later. But there were violations all over the place.
And I'll
Housing
say,
violations?
I'll say that
The staff was there, Mr. Duffield was there, and Ms. Mason was there, and they saw the violations.
right.
But you're still not, are you saying, okay, so I'm assuming we'll have another conversation? Or Mr. Duffield, you were saying something?
Sure, and just to be clear, Audrey did reach out to me. I did get calls from residents myself saying, hey, Mr. Duffield, we're concerned about the party because last year's party sort of ended in several fights and the grounds were left in bad shape, and we really don't want to see that happen again. I had one resident who said, look, I've got to get up at 5 in the morning, and I'm concerned that my peaceful enjoyment basically is going to be disturbed. When I had the opportunity to talk with the host resident, just reminded them that our policy says you're more than welcome to have a party. There's no reason you can't. Your guests do need to be in your company. either in your house or in the backyard area, and in your immediate company. And they seem receptive to that. Also reminded folks that, look, if we have guests who don't have visitor tags on their car, there may be a chance that they are towed. But so remind guests that they need to either park on the street or have a guest tag. And that was the sum total.
And that's, I mean, we try to be responsive to everyone's complaints, especially residents. If we hear something, I'll do anything and everything I can to help out.
So what would have been the proper way for them to handle this situation? Because, I knew about the party for a while. It's an annual event to celebrate a young man from over there who got killed.
Right.
They're not trying to, they're really just trying to show respect and love to Denzel, excuse me. So what would have been the proper way? Do they need to get a permit moving forward next year to have a gathering maybe at the community center as opposed to it being at a residence? I just want to help alleviate this issue because it's something that means a lot to those residents, and I see it's a very passionate topic amongst commissioners. So what's the proper way to go through it? Because they're gonna want to continue to do it, and he's from there. So how can we do it the best way?
You have
What's the
to
best
deal
way?
with the crowd control for one thing. You have to deal with respect to the residents for another. You had a parking lot that was full, residents was coming in, had nowhere to park. You had cars on both sides of the street from Langford Avenue clear up to almost Hart Mill, way past the maintenance office. You had kegs of beer that was sitting out on the main sidewalk and a grill outside of the gate. Anybody's child could have got hurt on a hot grill. There was all kind of violations there. Like I said, you had fights that broke out last year. The property wasn't even prepared for that kind of situation. And not only that, there are lease violations. There are clearly lease violations. Who does that? Who does that in public housing? Who does that?
So again, you're bringing me the problems, and I asked you about the solution. So
you got to know what the problems were before you can deal with the solution.
Can you allow me to finish? Thank you. Again, what is it that we can do to let them know the proper way for them to be able to have this party? Is there another way? Is there a permit or a different process that they can go through?
I'm not aware that CRHA has got a policy or permit process that allows for a block party, aside from one in which the community residents themselves come together and collectively petition the housing authority to be able to do that.
So do we need a policy? Or do we just need to tell them that they need the community center, or move everything towards the community center?
I would say, that's what our community centers are for. Clearly, residences and yards are not big enough for that kind of crowd.
It's just about finding solutions opposed to...
I absolutely think that, if this has gotten so popular, it's worth a sit down with the family to find ways to honor the spirit of the party without having it infringe on the peaceful enjoyment of the property, which is something we guarantee everyone in their lease.
And then when you're talking about the community center, you're talking about a certain number of people who are allowed in the community center. And then when it's the community center, it's the community center. It's not the parking lot and all over everywhere else.
So I have a question. I know we do a South First Street Day. We do a West Haven Day, Mickey Drive. We do all of these days. What is the protocol on doing that? Because it's situated as a block party.
Well, those are with Housing Authority as a sponsor.
Okay. So should the person that's given the Denny Day, what was it, Commissioner Bell? Denzel Day?
Denzel, yeah, more.
So would the person that's doing the Denzel Day or the person that's doing any type of day on the property be the sponsored person for the fellowship or block party that's going forward? Would they be identified as the sponsor?
I don't know.
Or
I
could
think-
they? And I'm just asking this because I see that the policy about parties or whatever the policy is or the protocol is not updated, obviously. And so I think what's going to have to happen is a capacity is going to have to be established. How many numbers, is considered a party, and then, how many numbers past that will be considered a block party. And then that way, we can identify whether it can be in a home, or whether it needs to be in a community center, or whether it needs to be identified as a sponsored block party or fellowship in order to put some things in order. I totally understand Ms. Audrey. I understand West Bellamy. I know that the community does celebrate. And I just think that that's a part of the policy that hasn't been updated. And in order to figure out where to start at, we might need to start with numbers. So if we want to talk about violations and being rude and disrespectful on the property, then maybe that should be something we should look at. Whether it should be in the house, how many people? The community center, how many people? And if it's going to be a block party, how many people? And then maybe start there to update the policy.
I would
Thank you.
I would agree with that. I think there's have to be some flexibility in the policy. I mean, in an event, what if someone? I think about when Denzel first got killed. There was a large cookout and gathering at the house. I mean, we hope that things like this don't happen, but when unfortunate incidents happen, it normally brings about a large contingent of people. Do you want to tell someone that because we have a policy, you can't have an open space to grieve or people to come and pay their respects?
Well, I mean, not to interrupt, and I hear
Sure.
you. I mean, repast and, ceremony, repast and those kinds of events take top priority for our community centers. That is the nature and purpose of our community centers for those kinds of events. And we do have a pretty clear community center policy. We also have clear policies regarding parking and asking for guest parking permits if you're going to have a large event at a community center. And we have clearly established guidelines in the lease about noise and things. I think all of the elements of what you just brought to us exist across several different policies that we have. So perhaps putting them all in one place so that it's clear is something that we can do.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, I appreciate this conversation, but we do have Sergeant Haney here, and we've gotten a little off of just sort of security and safety in general, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but as you are here, we have been having discussions with our security company, with our residents about preparations for the weekend of August 10th, 11th, and 12th. You and I spoke briefly about that. I didn't know if there's anything you wanted to share or...
So as of right now, the preparations are still being made. We're going to have a lot of resources on hand that weekend, and we'll have resources on hand to respond to anything that may pop up in these communities and public housing. As of right now, we're not going to be able to station individual units in the community, but we'll have resources in place to respond to any calls that may arise.
And do you have, what is... for general citizens who live in neighborhoods that might be affected by this, what is the guidance that you would offer?
Just general safety guidance. I mean, if you want to stay home, stay home that weekend. Downtown is, there's going to be some streets that are blocked off. There's going to be some parking that will be taken up. I just, tell everyone just to be wise about that weekend.
Great.
And we literally are preparing for the worst case scenario, and preparations are still being made. And I think as we get closer, that you'll have Chief Brackney as well meet with the community and other parties.
Okay.
And Chairwoman Jones, I'll just add on to that, and we've spoken, it's, I want the commissioners to know and the community to know that we have engaged our security contractor, Millennium Security, to provide additional patrols and presence at Crescent Halls, at South 1st Street, at 6th Street, and at West Haven throughout the 10th, 11th, and 12th. Yeah, the entire weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's hopefully, hopefully nothing happens. But if there are threats, hopefully we can partner with CPD and address those quickly.
Absolutely. We, like I said, we are going to be well prepared, and we're preparing for worst case scenario.
Good.
Across the city.
Thank you. And I know you have some other events coming up, if you want to mention them now.
Yeah, so we do have some other events coming up. We just finished Ice Cream with the Cop, and that went extremely well this year. And next year, we want to go to other public housing neighborhoods as well as other venues around the city. We also have our second annual Charlottesville Night Out, which is a community event that the Police Foundation as well as other city resources are going to participate in, where we will have free food, bouncy maze. We're going to have face painters, Kona Ice, the whole shebang, pizza, free sliders from Mission Barbecue. So DJ, it's open to the entire community, and we're going to have some flyers out there for that. So we welcome everybody. That's August the 7th from 5:30 to 8:30, and it's going to be at Ix Park, so kind of right in the center of the city.
Thank you. Do commissioners have other questions for Sergeant Haney? No. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we have another guest here for commissioners who might have questions about the air conditioning at Crescent Halls. I know that there have been, we've been hearing some complaints, and we definitely have had a lot of folks out, so remind me your name.
My name is Andrew Davidson.
And thank you,
no
Mr.
problem.
Davidson.
I'm with Colonial Web.
With
I'm
Colonial
sorry,
Web.
sir. Could you say that in the microphone?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Andrew Davidson.
And who are you with?
I'm with Colonial Web.
All right, okay.
So for Colonial Web is the contractor that works with the Housing Authority to handle all of the systems at Crescent Halls.
Correct.
And I don't know if there's specific questions, or if you'd just be willing to sort of give us an update on, we know there's some units that had some challenges, how we handled those, and what we're doing to be proactive.
Sure, yeah, and I'd heard some comments on some fans that had been passed out, and we're awfully, we are very concerned if any of the individual tenant spaces do not have cooling. We try and address those on a case-by-case basis, and I'll tip my hat to Mr. Duffield. When we're made aware that there's an issue in a tenant space, we try and respond as quickly as we can. I can say that the equipment serving the base building, which would be the chiller that the chiller you guys made a large investment in a year ago, is running as it should. Which essentially supplies chilled water to the entire building. The challenge on a building like Crescent Hall is each room has a respective, it's called a valence unit. And what can be a little deceiving about a system like this is that people think that there is a blower blowing air. That is not the case with the design on this system. It's called a passive system. And so chilled water goes through a beam. As hot air rises, it goes across the beam and falls back down into the room to cool the space. And so what happens in those types of systems from time to time, valves can become closed or stuck, or thermostats might be faulty. And as those situations arise, I encourage you, or anybody in the room that lives in Crescent Hall, please call in and create a service ticket, because as we hear of those calls one-on-one, we're able to run the service calls. And in most cases, if the valve is, if we're not able to fix it on site, we are at least able to get it open so that you're going to get cooling that day. And really they have to be handled on a one-by-one basis. But, it sounds to me like there might be some more that are not having cooling. We just need to be made aware, and we're happy to engage as quickly as we can. Yeah.
And I understand you all now have some regular service hours where you're just there just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, and that's been part of the maintenance contract that we set up with you guys, is a walkthrough essentially. And during peak, I guess the summer peak months, we're there weekly ultimately. And what we do in those times is inspect the base building equipment to ensure that, you are getting chilled water through the building. Now, it's a little bit tricky to coordinate getting in the tenant spaces. Obviously, there's some logistics that go behind that, and we don't want to intrude on anybody's personal space. But what we can try and do is check in at the front office and see if there are any specific instances or any rooms that we need to get into. And we are happy to help and want to engage just as quickly as we can answer the phone. So I encourage anybody that lives in there, please reach out to, and Grant, I'm not sure what that process looks like, who they need to reach out to within the building itself, but we always get the call and try and respond the same day if we can.
So I have one question. So how quickly are you all receiving the phone calls for tenants who are having problems with their ACs? Is it that day, the next day, 2 days later?
Well, as far as our response time, we're usually
Not
there
response time. How soon are you guys notified?
They call us, we call them.
that day. Yeah, I don't know. You know,
Okay, so you
ultimately,
wouldn't know that
By the
information?
time we get the call, I mean, it would be us there within the same day. I'm not sure.
Same day?
Yeah.
How effective can every AC unit within the building, can it be repaired? If it's not running or what have you, can it be fixed?
Yes, they are all repairable. Varying levels of sophistication depending on which type of unit it is. I'll say this, so each floor in your hallways per floor, those units have a blower, okay? They're served by what they call a makeup air unit, and they pull air from outside, they condition it, and then supply cold air to the hallways, okay? So those are actual air handlers. Those, actually Grant approved a few quotes this weekend, and we have parts on order that are going to be repaired hopefully by the end of this week. The room spaces, the tenant spaces, there's always a way. Sometimes the parts might be obsoleted, but we can find something else that can replace it, if that makes sense. Yeah, and sometimes we are dealing. The building's got some age to it, and so some of the rooms might have parts that are 25 years old. So you just have to find something that you can retrofit that with. To make it work, but it's a perfectly acceptable system, and in many ways, the way this building was designed, engineers got away from it for a while, and it's actually coming back and almost is in vogue having a valance unit. So it's definitely an acceptable way of cooling a building.
Okay, thank you.
Have we Have we identified if it's same parts breaking down or just different things on different units, or?
I would say there's probably low-hanging fruit. There's two main culprits, and that is there's a chilled water actuator valve, okay, that meters water going into the valance unit. Here lately, we've seen quite a few of those that have failed, and the ones that are failed are maybe 20-something years old, and getting those replacement parts in, they can be replaced. It takes a little while to get them, and then it's thermostats. And what can be tricky, I think, for the tenants is you have two thermostats, one for air conditioning and one for heat, and sometimes the two get confused. And those are your two biggest culprits, probably.
Okay, so do you think it'd be beneficial for us to check the ones that are outdated just to make sure that they're in working order, or to see if they're in the highest capacity of working order or on their way out the door?
Well, what we've been trying to do is say we come across one or two, we'll order a surplus.
Okay.
So maybe if there's too bad, it's reasonable to think that maybe in the next week or so we could see some more, especially when you see say you have 95-degree temperature for 5 days in a row, which is outside the design temperature. It's reasonable to conclude, okay, if these two failed, you might have 3 or 4. Therefore, let's go ahead and get some extras to have, on site. And if something fails, we can go downstairs and grab one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So at the peak of the problem this month, how many units were down at one time?
Let's see. And this is going over a couple of weeks. I think at any given time, I think the highest amount we saw were 5 actually down. And we were able to, in one day we were able to actually get the valve open. Now that's what we're made aware of, and that's to say, I always want people to, anyone that lives there, please don't, please speak up. You know, if you're uncomfortable or you have an issue, have no fear of retribution or anything like that. We want to help, and so ultimately, we're only as good as the information that we get. And and you don't have to suffer. Please, make the phone call. We'll do everything we can. Our guys, we've talked about it. I have a safety meeting tomorrow morning, and I will talk about that group then. If you guys have a call and you're not comfortable, we will make sure that the room has cooling. It might not be able to be metered correctly on the wall, but we'll get cold water coming to that chill water beam and get you some cooling.
And this month, how many total units were out over the course of like the last 30 days?
12, I would say. And yeah.
And you've referenced room several times. Is it 1 unit per room or per unit?
It's typically 2 valence units per room. And when I say that, per unit. I'm sorry, yeah, per unit. So a valence unit per room,
okay.
2 per unit is a typical setup.
And I'll share with commissioners, in your packets tonight, you've got a work order summary, and you'll see a number of property calls to Crescent Halls that indicate air conditioning matters. It may help give you some perspective on what we're dealing with.
And those are all closed at this point?
I think so. There may have been some late last week that, let's see. I think the AC calls are closed out.
That's what I see. I don't
Yeah.
see any open AC calls at
Yeah.
this time.
Right. Okay.
But again, please don't suffer. Call. And I mean, it is we're in a high humidity environment in Virginia. And in a building like that, it can get very hot. And when you have days of 90-degree temperature sustained, it puts a lot of stress on any system. And so things are inevitably going to break in a mechanical system, but they can be fixed. And we're happy to try and help any way we can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yes, please.
No, he answered.
Oh, okay. So we've been getting a lot of requests. I mean, you've been here from the beginning of the meeting, for people to have their air conditioners fixed, or there's been a huge push to get fans delivered and whatnot. I know I've been over a few different times and walked the halls, walked every floor, and it seems as if things were cooler, but people were saying that they weren't. Can you respond to that? I mean, because we've still been getting a lot of complaints about it being hot. I mean, do we need more fans, or is that something that it may not be as neat? I'm literally just trying to.
I think there's always a little hyperbole, if you want to say it. When this time of year, and by that I mean saying, yes, we've seen cases where it. How do I say this politely? It isn't always as bad as it seems. What can compound the situation is if the hallway unit is also not working for whatever reason, and then someone has a room a tenant might have a room that's not cooling properly, and they go outside for relief in the hallway, and that's not working. It makes it worse than it sounds, but. There have been a few instances where we've been called in and there wasn't a problem within the space, and we were able to go in and make no adjustment, and the person was happy when we walked out. Let's put it that way. But nonetheless, that there is any number of things that can happen in a building like that can cause someone's body temperature to go up. I mean, it's just yeah.
I mean, we've seen, as we heard earlier, it was over or nearly 40 fans that have been distributed.
Yeah.
But we hear that, like, something just doesn't.
I'm with you. Like, when I heard all the fans, there hasn't been 40 subsequent calls of no AC. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, like, if all those fans are being passed out, Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, because we haven't had that many calls proportionate to say, hey, let's go in there and look and see why the air conditioner isn't working. The math didn't add up to me either, but.
But in everyone's defense, I mean, 2 years ago, we did have a catastrophic situation.
Oh, it was a nightmare. Yeah.
And so, that's still fresh in everyone's mind. And, if I were walking out into the hallway
Yeah.
and there's no relief,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's happening again.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
No, there's no fault at all
Right.
for that.
No, I agree. Yeah.
And we did, we found ourselves in a position where we had to make a significant investment just last year.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
something major breaks. So,
Right.
I mean, the pattern is,
Right, and-
big things can break in this system.
Well, that's
and
why
it's
I was
not a
only
good
asking
thing.
because I just
No,
want clarification.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even when the system's working perfectly in your unit at 95 degrees, sometimes it's just hot. I have my fan on and my air conditioning also, so I appreciate the fans and the support the
Yeah.
community has given to add to people's comfort, no
And that's
doubt.
it. Yeah.
And I also am pleased that people did call even if their unit weren't experiencing
Sure.
difficulties, and we'd much rather check a unit and have it actually be working
It could
than
have
have someone
prevented something
suffer.
from happening.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
For
Yeah.
being here. And any commissioners have any other comments or questions for Mr. Davidson? Great.
I have a question for Grant, but
Okay.
thank you, Mr.
All right,
Davidson.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Appreciate you
coming
being
out.
here this evening.
So, does the building code say that we can't have small, energy efficient AC window ACs?
Yes.
I need to check on that and see. I don't know. I think the nature of the windows that we have aren't conducive to window AC units, but that's just a guess on my part.
So I know they have the portable ACs that you roll up and then you just put them inside the window with the hose and it blows cool air. I'm wondering if commissioners can have a conversation about maybe purchasing a few of those for when the ACs go down and it's extremely hot. I know when it's hot, it's hot. I don't care if you have a fan, it's hot. And it might be 95 degrees outside and the fan just won't work. And so I'd be interested if we could price those and see if we could have some on hand and have, when we get the calls in, have maintenance to go in and install them. And once the system is running and up and and running properly, we can have maintenance to go in and take them out of the windows and also work on the turnaround time for maintenance to get those into the window and to get them out of the window. I think that when it's 95 to 105 degrees outside, a fan is just not going to work. It's just not going to work. And so I know those portable ACs work really well. I think it's a good idea for a board to have discussion about seeing if we can purchase those and turnaround time for maintenance to get them in the units and turnaround time for maintenance to get them out of the unit. Also, maintenance and upkeep of the machines as well.
Thank you. We've gotten a little bit off of our agenda, and I'd like to pull us back, but I wanted to make sure that our guests got to speak earlier in the evening. So if I can pull us back, we're actually on item 4 on our agenda, which is approval of minutes from our board meeting held June 25th.
Also, I have one more thing before we move ahead. Grant, can we send out reminders to all of the residents to call in the service ticket immediately if the ACs break down?
We, in fact, we flyered every unit last week and a half ago, something like that, just with exactly that. Yeah.
Okay.
I move approval of minutes of June 25th.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. And next on our agenda, we have spent several months and some great hours in work sessions hashing through an update to our administrative plan for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And at this time, I believe we have a document that we would like to put out for public comment. Mr. Duffield, do you want to speak briefly on this? You'll find it all under tab 3.
Julie, can you tell the public how long it'll be out for comment?
It's a 45-day public comment
That's
period.
correct. Yep. Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the commission, before you, attachment B is the Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 Administration Plan, as updated and revised July 2018. As Chairwoman Jones alluded, much work has been done both by the commission with input from the public and staff, and at the direction of our consultant partners from the Harrisonburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority. The document before you is one that is fully up to current HUD guidance standards, and also includes certain elements that the CRHA Board of Commissioners requested we include within the HCV admin plan as a means to make the overall HCV program more efficient, more effective, more responsive to the needs of those who participate within the program. I'll point to just a couple areas, and Mr. Collins alluded to some of these during his comments. Page 31, for instance, includes what is a significantly expanded list of local preferences that are proposed to be included within the admin plan. This is a departure from the strategy that we've used previously and seeks to place certain values for certain families in various situations. Page 39, we have an adopted payment standard for our housing choice voucher landlord participants of 110% of the fair market rent for this area, and that again is a departure. The document again brings CRHA into compliance with current HUD standards. As Chairwoman Jones alluded, we have at this point, the commission needs to accept the document as presented. That will allow us to put the document out for public comment period. Following the close of public comment period, we take those comments, make any additional edits that we wish to the document itself, and then prepare to submit it, to adopt it formally by resolution and submit it to HUD for ratification.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from commissioners about this plan?
I was just looking at, we scheduled a meeting where we would propose approving this. Is that on an agenda yet?
So if we open a 45-day comment period, we will next probably look at this at our September board meeting. So it'll be slightly longer than 45 days, and then probably a vote for approval in October.
I would think that's correct.
It would be the full timeline. I want to thank my fellow commissioners for the time and work that they put into this document, and to say I personally was once again really impressed with my colleagues and their thoughts, and really felt like we're very much on the same page in terms of lowering barriers for entry to our programs, increasing fairness, increasing equity. There's still a few things in here that we're working through the details on along those lines, but really appreciate that we all have a very similar approach, and I'm very pleased that I think there's a lot of things in here that will increase our efficiencies, but most importantly, have made the program more accessible and more fair. Along those lines, though, there are some significant changes, both in policies that we had to adopt to be in compliance with HUD, and most importantly, as Mr. Duffield pointed out, implementing a preference system, which will require a reordering of our wait list. And so, I don't know, Mr. Duffield, if you want to just speak briefly in terms of preparations that staff will be making to handle the implementation of this, as there will be a sort of increased administrative burden for a couple months as we do that.
Right, well, just speaking briefly, staff will be making administrative changes and preparations for them. Yeah. I think that's about as far as I can go.
Fair enough. I just know that our staff has so many things on their plate, and that I trust can rely on Harrisonburg as we have to assist us through that process. And there may be some temporary hires made to make it go smoothly.
Can I just ask in that regard, are we planning on just totally flipping the wait list to something new? Or is there going to be some transitional period where someone that's been on the wait list for a period of time gets some priority?
The way we're not opening the list. So we have a list now, and the way that it currently works is it's a lottery system.
Right.
But once we adopt this plan, we will have to send notifications to everyone on our list, informing them of the preference system, giving them the opportunity to apply for those preferences, and then reordering the list accordingly based on preferences and date and time stamp. But I actually appreciate you for bringing that up very much, because
Always count on me to ask a dumb question.
it wasn't a dumb question at all, and I want to be clear that, we have a waiting list for this program now that is closed. So you can't actually apply to be on our waiting list at this time. So it's really with the pool of people that's currently on that list. Are there other questions about this in the program? While we're not formally voting to adopt it, I would like a vote approving this draft and putting it out for the comment period. If someone wants to make a motion.
I move approval of the July 2018 draft to the Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 admin plan.
Before we move forward, I had a question, Osteen. So, so the list that we have, we're gonna implement the new changes into the list so that people can apply for the preferences. So with that being said, some of the people that are already on the list may move up the list because of the preference, the way the preference is going to be reordered. So I guess my question would be, should we deal with the list as it is now, and then once we reopen, apply the new way? Because these people that's on the list have been on the list for so long, and then you have some people that's on the list that are just right there, and we saying we're going to apply this preference, which means that they may get dropped all the way to the bottom of the list. That's not fair.
I agree with you. This list operates differently than the public housing list, where you can call in and figure out where you are. With the HCV waiting list, it's all a lottery system. So you might have applied 5 years ago, and you might have applied last year, and you have an equal chance of being pulled in the lottery. So, am I correct,
That's
Mr.
correct.
Duffield?
Yeah,
So when we move to the preference system, we'll actually create one that says if you've been on the list long, your time date stamp will make you closer, then perhaps it'll be more fair. But as soon as we adopt this, we can't have two different lists. As soon as we adopt this, from what I understand from what we asked Harrisonburg, we have to go with this new system. But that won't be until October or November after we formally vote on it.
So I thought that we had talked about doing away with the lottery for this list. So if we're doing away with the lottery, but we adopt this, then that means that there is no more lottery once we adopt this. So that means that people could potentially, like I said, that been on the list for a very long time, could be dropped all the way to the bottom of the list because there is no more lottery.
Well, right now, there's no bottom or top of the list. Once we go through this, we will have an ordered list. If somebody has been in our system for a very, very long time, just given the date and timestamp of when they applied, they will not, most likely not be on the very bottom. But I don't know. You're right. There are
I'm
preferences
looking for a
that will-
definite, not a most likely. I want to know where these people are going to fall. I'm sure these people are here.
We don't
wanna
know
too.
because we don't know about the preferences.
So before we send this out, I mean, that's something that we might need to think about. I know we were in a meeting, and I know we want to push this because we want to get this approved, but I would like to know what's going to happen to those people. Like I said, if we taken away from the lottery, like you said, now it's not a top or bottom because it's a lottery. Once we adopt this, there is no lottery. So what happens? Nobody has that understanding. If somebody has the answer to that, can they please speak up?
Yeah,
Mr.
no,
Duffield, if you wanna-
what happens is those within the list that have qualified preferences come to the top of the list. And we have the qualified preferences based on the values that the board and the community identified as these are participants that we feel we need to house more expeditiously than others. So, yeah, that's how the list will be ordered.
Could we add a preference that you were on the waiting list on a certain date? You know, retroactive to this
So
new
time and
system coming
date.
in place?
The page 34, 5.9, order of selection. So yeah, you've got the preference scores are the first. A tiebreaker then becomes the date of the application. Submission.
What page?
Page 34.
I guess my concern is if I was on the waiting list for 20 years and I don't have any of these preferences, and we resituate this list according to the new preferences, and there is no time lottery, I don't want to be on the list for 20 more years.
That's true.
That's totally not fair to the person
That's not
who's
fair.
been waiting and doing everything that they're supposed to do in order. I think we need to find a solution to being able to house that person as well as the person with the preferences. I mean, because once we reorder this list with preferences, we don't know how many people are going to come to the top of the list for somebody that's been on the list for 20 years.
Well,
And I mean, I just think that's something we need to think through. I know it's something that we didn't go over in the meeting, but
I mean, I do think we had a long discussion in our work sessions about preferences and about the priorities of this housing authority, with an understanding that, you know, our preference before had only been live and work in the area, and that we would be sending a message and making a great change if we adopted a preference system. But by doing so, we communicate our values, and we do try to offer assistance to those in most need through a preference system, which is something I think I heard from the board in terms of our values and meeting our mission.
I totally agree with everything that you're saying, but would you approve a negative budget? Because that's basically what we're getting ready to do. We're getting ready to send something out for approval or comment, public comment, and we don't know, we haven't worked through that portion of it. I mean, I just think that we need to have a conversation and have that added and then put this out for a public comment.
Well, I welcome comment, you know, we do have a 45-day comment period. This is an excellent opportunity for our, you know, community advocates and for consumers in the program, for people on the wait list who have concerns to share those with us and help us shape this section if needed.
And while it's out for that 45 days, you still have time to go back to Harrisonburg and talk to them about this concern and see
That's
what
right.
Yep.
they will advise us to do there.
We can talk to Harrisonburg and we can talk to HUD Richmond about
Please
how to
do.
handle these kinds of transitions when you change a preference system so drastically as we're doing now, if they have advice for us. Thank you. Are there other thoughts and comments? If not, I have a motion from Mr. Osteen. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you. Next on our agenda are redevelopment updates. And I would have you all turn to tab 2, tab 3 in your binders and find a draft that is very nearly the final draft of the RFP of, or request for proposals for a development partner. So as you all know, tab 3. As you all know, 6 weeks ago or so, we put out a request for qualifications seeking development partners who might be interested in working with us, specifically as we look at new developments on the vacant properties of the Housing Authority. Through that process, we qualified 6 potential partners, and the redevelopment committee has been working diligently and very hard, meeting weekly, to draft an RFP that lays out more specific guidelines of our vision and criteria by which we would like to judge potential projects for those 2 sites. This will go out to those 6 partners seeking, and hopefully they'll all choose to respond to this RFP, and then we will have a selection committee that then works through choosing a development partner. So I'm very excited that we are making substantial movements forward in our redevelopment and new development efforts. Are there questions, comments, thoughts on this RFP?
What is SUP? On page 9, seek SUP for
Special use permit. What we, as this goes out, is now on the onus of the redevelopment committee and this authority with our partners to really have even more conversations with residents, particularly residents at South First Street, about this process and about where it may be heading. So that's certainly part of the plan. And the redevelopment committee, once this out, will get to focus on some of the other pieces that we've been working on, which are, as you all will remember, we voted to separate, to begin the process to make it easier to go through the HUD hoops to free up property at Levy Street and the vacant portions of South First Street for development, and that involves surveys and then an application to the city for replatting those properties. And so that work is underway. Those are 2 major redevelopment updates. Are there any other? If not, I will say that the redevelopment committee also to discuss, now that we are moving quickly down the path of building something, how we will pay for it. And it was brought to the redevelopment committee that perhaps this is an ideal time to have a conversation with city council about using bond authority to support redevelopment initiatives. And to that end, under tab 4, you will find a resolution that it was recommended, sent to us from the redevelopment committee concerning the city, requesting that the city use its bonding authority on behalf of redevelopment of public housing in Charlottesville. And I will give you all a chance to look that over, and questions and comments are welcome. Did you want to add something, Mr. Duffield?
No, not at all.
Can you give me a little more clarity on the section 3?
You're on the RFP?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the RFP, we are,
For, the section 3 portion that says, per the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, section 3 fosters local economic development, neighborhood economic improvement, and individual self-sufficiency. Section 3 is the legal basis for providing jobs for residents and awarding contracts to businesses in the areas receiving certain types of HUD financial assistance. Businesses which can provide evidence that they meet one of the following criteria qualify as Section 3 businesses. Is that saying have businesses on site? Is that what that's saying? That's Section 3?
it's saying that we want to ensure that the development partner we choose is in compliance with HUD Section 3 rules.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean that it could mean that they'll hire subcontractors that
So
are
that-
Section 3 businesses. It could mean that they hire Section 3 qualified employees. There's a lot of different ways
Right,
that
so that's what I was trying to understand exactly, because it doesn't spell it out. Okay.
well, it's just a lot of legal lingo. Yes. Good question. So, if you've all had a chance to take a look at the request, Mr. Bellamy, I didn't know if you had thoughts specifically as our council representative.
Sure. So one of the things after reading this at length and reviewing it, I think that it's something that we can take into account and definitely mule over. But I think there are a couple of things that we may need to fine tune a little bit before officially accepting, adopting, and moving forward with it and or presenting it to council. Being that I kind of have an idea of what they would be looking for, and if we truly want this to pass, there are some modifications that may need to be made. But that's just my position as one member on this board.
Tell us what they are.
I'm sorry?
You want to tell us what those issues are?
Well, I think when we look at a number like $50 million, and even as Mr. Collins alluded to earlier, presenting this to council and saying, hey, let's move forward with the $50 million bond initiative without having a pre-described way for council to be able to pay for the debt service that will come with that would be problematic. I also feel that, let's just be honest, if my colleagues were to hear that, I think it may scare them or kind of freak them out before we can even really get to it. And what I would like for us to see us do is try to figure out ways that we can make this come to fruition, opposed to maybe saying something and then hoping like they'll come down and understand it.
I agree with you.
I just know of what other competing priorities in the city, which public housing or redevelopment is one that's a high priority for us. But how do we get there in terms of how do we pay for it? Furthermore, council would also like to ask, what's the plan? So they would say, if we were to, excuse me? All right, so the one thing that I know council would say is if we decide to float a $50 million plan, do you have the developers lined up? Do you have the relocation plans already in place? Do you have the site plans of what you want to do? Is there something that you can present to us? Those are questions that they would initially have before wanting to move forward, because I think that, as has been documented, they've stated, Mr. Bellamy, you have consistently asked us to fund different things for the housing authority, which we support, but they always ask me a lot of different questions. And then the underlying question that they always ask me is, so at what point do we start to see some of the return on our investment? We've given money in your equity package. We did this stuff with Ting. We given money for this. We given money for that. When are things gonna come back? Or when can you show us what's transpired? And if we don't have a clear plan of how we're gonna move forward, this may be one that they deny. And I think us going through the CIP process would be a better suited for us. Now, that being said, I'm completely open to us pushing forward with the bond. I don't know if 50 million is the number, but there are ways that we can get to it. But again, if we can provide council with our homework done on the front end, they'll be a lot more receptive to us and what we want to do.
I would agree with that. I think 50 million sounds like a nice round number. I think we need a budget that shows what the right number is. And, it might be 50 million, but I would like to see some backup that justifies that number. Absolutely.
Mr. Bellamy, Dr. Bellamy, I would just say you're absolutely right. You've done some wonderful work on behalf of CRHA and on behalf of our public housing residents in securing funding for internet, for substantial rehab work, for any number of things. I think a $50 million ask is nothing for you to be able to get pushed through the council, right? I've got all kinds of faith, right?
Right.
Okay? So.
Yeah. Okay.
$50 million bill.
I did not say that. Let's let the record I did not. Mr. Osteen said that. That did not come from West.
Own it.
So I think the primary goal of, well, clearly the primary goal is to get $50 million or a significant commitment of
They working on not giving that.
of money. But a close second is to ensure that in all the conversations and all the priorities that happen, and we know that you keep public housing redevelopment at the forefront in council, but that there is, that it doesn't get lost. And that we really do want to have, is this or is something like this an opening of a conversation where we, not just with council, but with economic advisors, with other folks who really can get us to that right number quickly so that we don't lose the momentum that is there in our community and the will of council right now, that and all of these incredible projects that are being approved and the taxes that will come in from those being earmarked to ensure that some of those really are truly going to go to those most in need.
Right. So there was two things come to mind based off of all of your comments. One, I think the first question that will come back is Wes or Dr. Bellamy. When you first got here, you specifically asked us to do $2.5 million to the Housing Authority in your equity package. So that's $500,000 a year that's already earmarked. What are you, show us council, what exactly has happened or what you've done with that money? That would be the first question. And if we can't clearly articulate, which I think we can, but we need to clearly be able to articulate what we've done thus far and then what we plan to do moving forward. Then the second question would be, I think we would need to develop a strategy in regards to showing where the money would come from. So I know Mayor Norris and I, we to the chagrin of some, and as I sat down at that other end getting yelled at, we worked very hard on the West 2nd development to ensure that there would be a certain amount of units, one, but also the tax revenue that came back would potentially be able to be used for, and what we were talking about was essentially this, redevelopment, right? So that's nearly $950,000 in anticipated tax revenue. That would essentially be able to cover something like a $20 million bond, not $50 million, according to our calculations. So that would be something that we would need to talk specifically to council about, right? So we know you all approved this. We know when you approved it, I even had that discussion on the dais. Can we look at earmarking that specific tax revenue to float a bond to pay for the debt services? But we need to have those things in writing, clearly defined plans or potential plans, where we want to start relocation and so forth. Because if not, the only thing that council has right now is Wes already said they get $500,000 a year, and Wes has brought up that you may want to use West Second to do a bond. We don't know how much the bond is, but those are just ideas.
Okay.
So what would your recommendation, I hear you saying maybe not this. So what are your recommendations for us in terms of bringing this conversation further with your colleagues?
Yeah, so I'll also make no quorums, and this may be to the chagrin of other entities in the city. While I have a lot of respect for other nonprofits, my first priority is public housing. So I will always be an advocate for public housing first, and that's no disrespect to PHA, Habitat, whomever. What I would suggest that we do is come back with a number that's a little lower. I think the $20 million number may be more realistic, with us specifically asking, can we look at the tax revenue that's generated from West Second to come and float this specific bond? But we also need to have some kind of drawings, or maybe we could work with Ms. Brenda Kelly from the city, or Mr. Osteen, who's on this board, or whomever, for us to have a plan of sorts of what we will do with the money.
I mean, we will have proposals from potential development partners mid-September.
I'm sorry, and along with Mr. Osteen's budget. So we need to be able to have the budget to clearly identify.
Is that timeline one that fits with the capital process?
Can we get into the capital process? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we can, yes.
Okay.
They're not gonna.
We
say
don't
no.
want, we don't want to be, you know,
Well, that's
we
why
want to
I'm,
be respectful of all the processes the city has to move through when it comes to budgeting.
respect is. Yeah. We can get it in the capital process,
Okay.
one way or another.
Okay, excellent.
So. So again, that's not me recommending that we say no. I would just recommend that we hold off. Meetings are at noon. I'm at work. Sorry, I can't. That's true.
Are there thoughts, comments, questions from commissioners?
Great.
So we would like to take your recommendations and thoughts back to the redevelopment committee tomorrow, and may have, and then we'll communicate with you, Dr. Bellamy, about next steps after meeting with the redevelopment committee.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, just one clarification. Is it tomorrow or Thursday?
It's tomorrow.
I thought it was Thursday, but we're circulating this thing that says it's the 26th.
So maybe Julie just didn't type well. That's very possible that it's a typo.
Okay.
Or I read the wrong calendar. My apologies. It's Tuesday, the 24th, our normal Tuesday meeting. Thank you for pointing that out. My apologies.
Where is it again? At South First Street?
South First Street.
At noon?
At noon.
Okay, I'll be there tomorrow.
It's fitting that you'll be there.
I will not be there tomorrow. No, 50 million will be there.
Oh. Okay. With that, that brings us on our agenda to our executive director's report. Mr. Duffield? You all have been busy.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman Jones, members of the commission. Behind tab 5, we have the executive director's report for the period June 23rd to July 22nd, 2018. First on the bullets of key accomplishments, smoke-free community policy implementation. If I might pause for a minute here, I know we have one with the IRC, right? But yes, who?
Mr. Herman with the Independence Resource Center.
Yeah, who has done some initial work at Crescent Halls to make suggestion concerning implementation, ongoing implementation of the smoke-free policy. Out of respect for his time and since it's on topic, I'd ask if he could take a couple minutes at this point to share his findings with us. Yeah.
My name is Jim Herndon with the Independence Resource Center on Cherry Avenue.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here.
Mr. Vanderveer and I met with Ms. Mason several days ago concerning the 25-foot smoke-free area that is now being implemented at the Crescent Hall. And we found that one of the concerns Ms. Mason had was that people with disabilities, particularly people in wheelchairs, were going into the circular drive outside the 25-foot area and smoking. And this was a danger because automobiles use that, of course, to get around the facility. So we looked at some options, and it seemed like the best option would be to put a gazebo, which you guys, I think you've already purchased. I think it's out in the breezeway. Is that what
No, we decided that we would put it in the back where you could walk through the breezeway.
Okay.
And out.
Yeah, in the back in the grassy area. The issue with that is grass is not accessible to wheelchairs. So we've helped Ms. Mason identify the perspective of purchasing some temporary lay-down surface that would be accessible to wheelchairs to the gazebo. And she asked that I come tonight and be available for any questions that you might have about this issue.
Thank you. It sounds like you've been involved in conversations. What are
Yes, as you said, we purchased a gazebo. So now the issue right about now is trying to get the gate open because it's apparently rusted on the inside. So we're trying to get the gate open so that we could get the temporary flooring down for the wheelchair. Okay. So we were waiting on the go-ahead with you guys as well and Mr. Duffield.
So those gates are closed under recommendation from the police department for safety issues. So how are we balancing sort of security and safety and smoking?
Well, right now they're very safe because they don't open at all. But I kind of think that if we put, it's like a 12 by 12 gazebo. So if you put that on the hill, that's dangerous as well because there's traffic that comes through there. And if you put it on the lower bottom part, that's also dangerous because of speeding traffic going through there. So the back part of it would be the most safest place that you, with it being 25 feet from the building, that's the most safest place that you could put that. And we're just waiting on the go-ahead.
So the back side is where the grill and stuff is on?
Right.
Is that where you're talking about on the
and
back side?
And it too is actually 25 feet from the building.
So how much lighting is back there? And is there a safety issue at night?
Well, I think that we had also spoke with security about, because the lighting right now is fine. I don't know, I mean, we might want to check as far as, you know what I'm saying, the continuous lighting because it flickers off and on when it gets ready. But we was talking about speaking with security as far as, you know what I'm saying, upgrading the security a little bit so that they could be, you know, have a little bit more walkthroughs or, you know, and it's not very many people that actually come out there to smoke, because most of the people have quit smoking. So, you know, it's much more safer than anywhere else that you could think of putting it.
Thank you. I just want to, it's the tricky balancing work that we have to do.
So I had a question. I know that on to the right side of the building, there's a walkway, and I think a picnic table or something.
Mm-hmm. We agreed to put one of the picnic tables inside of the gazebo.
So, so is that the area that you're talking about, or are you talking directly outside of the breezeway?
Coming out of the door, you would turn to your left and go directly through the breezeway, where that's the only place that you could really have, you know, the wheelchair accessibilities anyway.
So there's no way it could be placed over on the side where the sidewalk is already to the right of the building?
No, because you got your,
It's too steep.
right, it's too steep for some people to walk. You got blind people that, you know what I'm saying, that's too steep for them to walk. Safety is more important than anything. We're trying to make it as safe as we possibly can with them. So it's pretty much in that back part, you know, and then you're not, everybody's not gathering around in that, you know, circular area where cars, ambulances, fire trucks, all that type of stuff have to, you know what I'm saying, adjourn. So that's pretty much the safest.
So help me understand the breezeway part and the wheelchair again, because that's not wheelchair accessible. Is that the
That's what we're talking about.
putting
the temporary, because you don't want to pour. I mean, we didn't want to wait to pour an actual walkway there, cement walkway there. So that's where they would come in and put the temporary walkway there, the rope, so that the wheelchairs.
Two things. I spoke with Mr. Vanderbilt today at the office, and there were two concerns. One would be the surface. You know, make sure that we purchase the correct surface. And the other would be, I don't know how high the gazebo is off the ground, but it would need to be a ramp, which we could purchase. I guess you could purchase a temporary ramp to get, you know, wheelchairs into the gazebo.
So, my concern is just security. I know you said that you all having conversation about them periodically walking through, but I guess my concern would be the fact that they already have security issues down there inside of the building, and so when you put it out back where there's no security cameras and there's nothing out there for the public to come down or something to happen from, you know, that main street or...
There's security cameras out there.
It's out back?
That's what I was just asking Mr. Duffield, because I thought the new security cameras are out on that back side. But it's still a matter of how much of that area is covering. We need to make sure that it's covering from the breezeway down to the...
Security, lighting, and when you say temporary services, how temporary in your experience? That you said that a temporary ramp and temporary hard surface to accommodate wheelchairs, is that something that survives the winter? Is that, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done extensive research on that. I was with the city for a long time, but you know, when we did it with the city, it was concrete. But this is something that would serve a purpose. The ones that I've looked at seem to be durable, you know, fairly durable. But I'd be willing to do some research if I needed to find out, you know, just how long the lifespan of those surfaces would be.
Are they metal? They're wood?
Well, different types. They're different types.
I think we need to make sure that we're in compliance.
Yeah,
Right, that's the main thing. We have to be in
We need to
compliance
make
with
sure
that.
we're
I
in
think once
compliance.
we'll make sure of that.
Yeah, the federal guidelines says stable and slip resistant.
Yeah,
And
that's what
that's what the ADA guidelines say. And there are different types of material. There are materials even that lay out on the sand on the beach, which would then allow a wheelchair to go out on the beach. So I gave Ms. Mason some links to that material, and but we, you know, the Independence Resource Center is willing to help out in any way we can, as far as, you know, specifications or standards, you know, to make it accessible for people with disabilities.
Thank you so much for your assistance with this.
Sure.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Not
No, but
yet.
if we're
Think we're
talking
good.
about-
Thank you.
If we're talking about people with disabilities, we cannot forget West Haven and the seniors there as well. That's going to be an issue. So we need to make sure that we're on top of that.
Right, we knew when we adopted the smoking policy that the first 6 months are really a study period to figure out where we need to make sure there are appropriate accommodations. And that, some of those we're implementing already. It sounds like West Haven, we may need to come up and do a quick evaluation as well.
I was interested to hear that people have quit. It'd be nice to have some feedback on relative numbers of quitters versus addicts.
So, Mr. Duffield, we interrupted you, and you had just
No.
begun your report. Please
That's fine.
continue.
Let's see, also, we completed a REAC inspection at West Haven last week. Our scores improved at West Haven by 11 points to 70. Certainly not as high as we'd like to see them, but it's substantial work in the right direction, and feel good about that. We have upcoming REAC inspections at South First Street and 6th Street on August 10th, and then Crescent Halls, I believe, on September 19th. Hats off to FAR and Ms. Johnson and the West Haven community for pulling together what is one of the most amazing cleanup day efforts I've ever been a part of, and any community I've served. Saturday between 7 and 3, you know, this is probably about 8 to 2 for me, but that's, you know, it's because I'm lazy. But yeah, we had a lot of people out that were doing a lot of hard work, good resident involvement. We had some community members that came out and shouldered the load with us, staff. Just a fantastic work effort there, and I really feel like if you haven't had a chance, you got to ride through sometime and take a look at the grounds. Certainly, you know, more we can do, but that was a nice SWAT, I thought. Also in West Haven, we had a tree fall on a couple of buildings. You may have heard about that, and we had a number of folks displaced for a period of time. On, let's see, July 5th, we had a tree fall on the 834 and 836 building. It's actually a limb of a tree. We had 6 families displaced. On the 5th, electrician and Dominion Power mobilized immediately. On July 10th, we had a tree company out to remove the limb and remove the remainder of the dead tree. July 11th, the electrician scoped the work that needed to be done and had to order some parts. On the 14th, the electrical repairs were made, and Dominion Energy was able to turn the power back on to the buildings. We had move-in of 4 of the 6 displaced families back into the buildings. We have 2 families that are still displaced. However, they are in the process of relocating within the West Haven community. In fact, that relocation should be completed this week. The insurance company has visited West Haven, and contractors have been retained to begin reconstruction work on the 2 units that have been most severely damaged. Estimates are that those units should be repaired and back online, hopefully within 60 days. Many thanks to, again, FAR. Many thanks to Wes and the city for coming out and helping us during the process of caring for the needs of those that were most severely impacted. We had tremendous, fantastic support from the Holiday Inn up at University, as well as the Hampton Inn on Main Street. They were exceptionally accommodating for us. Had local food providers that helped step up as well. It was a, it was a beautiful outreach, given some fairly terrible situations. But I think we're on the mend there, and potentially we learned a little something in the process. But we'll see. We've had the Crescent Hall security meeting, and we have ongoing security and HVAC matters that are being addressed. I spoke briefly about our August 12th preparations that are currently underway. Let's see, other things that are of interest. Meeting with the UACC representatives about the community gardening projects that taking place on our properties. We have contracted for the environmental work at Levy Avon, and that work is underway. We also have the surveying project at South First Street and at Levy Avon underway as well. We're coordinating with the Standard Building on their closeout for the CO tasks for CRHA. Probably need to spend a little time with Ms. Johnson to make sure those folks are covering all the bases that they promised. We're uploading the capital budget for HUD. Lots, just tremendous amount going on. We've got a fire sprinkler pump that we have to replace in the very near future. The fire sprinkler pump at Crescent Halls is functioning, but is in need of replacement, and that is a priority matter for us. We are taking quotes at this point, and hopefully we'll have that resolved fairly quickly. Again, the pump's functional, provides sufficient pressure, but it appears that there are significant wear parts that demand that we retire that unit and replace it in its entirety. As far as the fiscal performance of the agency, the first graph page that you see will give you the overall summary for our public housing sites. Suffice to say, at this point within the fiscal year, we are 3 months in of our 12-month period. That means we're 25% through our fiscal year. As we look at the year-to-date numbers, those percentages should fall close to that 25% benchmark. And by and large, they do. The revenue, overall revenues are at 24%. Our overall expenditures are at 22%. So our revenues are exceeding our expenditures. At this point, we're carrying a positive variance of just over $60,000 year to date. One line that jumps out is a tenant services line item. I need to research that some more. I suspect we have some charges that have been billed to that line item that really belong elsewhere in the budget, because I know we haven't performed as for the purpose of tenant services. So again, suffice to say, public housing side looks pretty strong. West Haven's performing well. Crescent Halls is performing at a loss, but we budget a loss at Crescent Halls. South First and 6th Street are performing well, as are our scattered sites. The Housing Choice Voucher Program at this point is showing a paper loss at this point. This is based on the losses because the funding cycle with HUD has not completed for this quarter. Once they catch up, we will be back in the black on a housing choice voucher. And then our central office functions are performing to budget. The remaining documents there are detailed line items for each department, each program. As I alluded earlier, there's a work order summary that has been included with this package. We've had, during the reporting period, we had just under 200 work orders recorded. And yeah, I don't have what I need to do is make a breakdown of how these work orders fall by property. You can see the properties, but I don't have them summarized by property. We do have some that are outstanding at this point, but it looks like most of those are within a week, maybe a week old, and some of them, things that that are clearly making making property available for service providers. That should be classified as closed out. But and you'll see clearly there are quite a few calls for air conditioning related concerns at Crescent Halls. There is no doubt. Commissioners, I hope that gives you some summary of the activities that have been taking place during the reporting period.
I had some questions.
I very much appreciate your support, and thank you for everything that you're doing to be supportive of me and my staff. It's enjoyable to work with you, and I will gladly take questions.
So the last meeting that we had, we talked about having the new vehicles as a line item in the budget, and I don't see that. I think we said that it would be coming out with this budget. It should be in here, but I'm not seeing it.
Okay.
I see vehicle gas and
Yep. The new
oil. I see maintenance, but I don't see the new vehicles
okay.
as a line item.
And Michelle just left.
Yeah. I think that's because the financing package has not been finalized. We have the vehicles, they're titled, they are in our possession, but the final financing document has not been released by the financing entity. However, we can get that. We certainly should have that shown within the budget.
Also, I had asked about the evictions list, the eviction list and rent repayment list that we used to get, and you said it will be added in this budget. I also asked about the turnaround list and the offline units list. You said will be added in this budget.
That is in the executive director's report.
Where is that?
At the top of each summary roll-up, it tells you how many units got turned, how many are vacant, and how many are substantial rehab.
Right.
And it's the all-site roll-up, right? So turns, rehab, vacant.
This is for the
That's everything all together, and then you can see it by site.
okay. So is it possible we can put it in the budget so it'll be reader friendly back on a separate page like we had it before? Because this kind of looks like, I mean, I guess for someone who doesn't really understand the budget, this just looks like a bunch of information. The way you had it before, it was reader friendly. It was on a separate page, and it was clear, and it had clarity that this is what we're reading.
Okay.
I also had, my last question is, have we done a tree assessment of all the properties to make sure that there's no, to make sure that, there's not another situation with a tree falling ongoing?
Yes, we have a tree assessment of all the properties that's been provided to us. And yes, there are trees that we need to address quickly. We are prioritizing those with the tree contractor.
Have we notified the, residents that that's gonna happen going forward? And, you know, just to be aware that some work will start going on, or when we get around to doing
Sure.
that, notifying the residents that there's gonna be
Yeah.
some work going on and around their unit with
Absolutely.
those, that tree
Yep,
work
absolutely.
being done.
Are there other questions for Mr. Duffield? Thank you, Mr. Duffield. A small request I would make is either next month or September, whichever one coincides with our next report to the city. Well, I would love an update on the rental assistance program. I'm not sure, I know we give them quarterly reports, so whenever that is, if we can,
That'll be in your bucket. But, okay, next meeting, we will,
if it's convenient, just when
Certainly.
we do that next report to the city, I would love to share that report with the board as well, just to check in on how that program's going.
all right.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? If not, we have a few committee reports. I apologize, I did neglect to include a maintenance committee report as it's new. But those of you who attended, if you want to give us a brief summary. Sorry to put you on the spot, Mr. Osteen.
Brandon gave the best report possible. I really couldn't think of anything beyond what he was talking about. He had a very good summary of it. But, you know, our biggest issue right now is kind of that head facility person is not on staff. We're looking for that person, and I think Brandon made the point, and I think it's critical. You know, in the general population, you think of that as a technically competent person in all these skills, and you know, we really talked about that. Really needs to be a people person as well as a technically competent person. That just interaction with our residents needs to be prioritized going forward, as well as the work certainly. But we you know, are looking at a Yardi system that has the ability to handle the calls, turn them directly into kind of work order requests. We're looking at a kind of a 5-year maintenance plan that would be generated by facility inspections that would get us out there in front of a lot of issues. So rather than dealing with, you know, an unlimited number of issues on a monthly basis as they fail, hopefully we could get out there in front of some big systems and address those problems. But yeah, we'll be continuing to work. The big announce is, you know, we would really love to have a resident from every site be a part of that committee. Someone, you know, I wouldn't emphasize how much work it might possibly be, but I'd rather emphasize we would like that point person so that we're getting some feedback on a monthly basis from what we're seeing on the sites. So anybody that would like to participate in that, we don't have our next meeting scheduled, but I will try to see that that happens and we'll get that word out. But we would be looking for greater participation by residents.
Fantastic, thank you.
So you all are meeting on a monthly basis?
That's the concept. We've had 2 meetings so far,
Okay.
and they were 3 months apart. So they were 2 months apart. So we didn't make it, but that would be the concept. Yes.
And yes, just let us know when you schedule the next one. Thank you. Ms. Johnson just left. And
She had to go to work.
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the Resident Services Committee this month. Were you there, Miss Oliver?
Yeah, I was.
Would
We
you
also
be
have
willing
a
to
report.
give us a report?
Well, we had a really good meeting. Ms. Karen Water-Wicks was there to kind of facilitate the meeting, and we basically talked about concerns about people feeling like public housing wasn't private property. They're coming onto the property, basically, doing what they want, disrespecting, again, the residents. That was an issue basically happening on West Haven. And then we talked about resident concerns about services that we felt that social services is not, it's kind of failing our folks rather than supporting the folks that they need to support. And, I think at one point we're going to make a statement to say, to the public that, this is just unacceptable. Poor people are not poor people. They're decent people that, and you need to respect that. We talked about, there's names that I don't want to put out here, but basically action plans about how the resident services will be dealing with these issues. And there are issues, there are concerns, and they need to be supported by, the residents need to support the resident service and the residents' concerns. And then our next meeting will be on August 9th at South First Street. I think it's usually 1 o'clock. They didn't put a time for 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. Oliver?
I have a question. The second paragraph, it says, Jay Johnson stated that she is aware of a juvenile who is working without breaks. Do we know anything about that? And have we identified that person to make sure we've corrected that?
Open any discussion regarding Facebook.
Right here.
I see, wait.
I think it says he's no longer working there.
It says, explain that he investigates employers with 6 to 14 employees and that client must have been fired. So,
we did talk about that, and it wasn't a lot of, I didn't get a lot of clarification of what was going on with that, but I did know that, if that was happening, then, it's a federal violation because they have to give them at least 30-minute breaks if you're working an 8-hour shift.
So,
And so that was something that we was discussing, and I think they're gonna go back and kind of check and see what was really going on with that.
So Grant, can we check into that and make sure that's being done? Have you heard anything about that?
That's, to be clear, that wasn't a CRHA employee.
Resident,
Okay.
right.
Okay,
Yeah,
no,
not
that
ours.
was
All
not
right.
our employee.
Right.
Yeah,
Our employees get breaks.
yes, yeah.
And if they're not getting breaks, Grant, can you make sure they are getting their breaks? Maybe just send out a text message, make sure the employees are getting their breaks.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Ms. Oliver, I was wondering if you'd also be willing to give us a very quick update on the clinic, the West Haven Clinic.
You know what, I didn't go to that last meeting.
But
so
we
I'm not-
hired a nurse, didn't we? Maybe. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I don't.
Can we put that on the agenda for next meeting?
Yes, at our next meeting, we will have a clinic update. Thank you. Okay. Is there other business that commissioners would like to bring to us this evening?
I just wanted to add one thing. When we're scheduling meetings, that we send out meeting dates and times in advance. And sometimes I can't get to my phone because I drive the bus. So it's hard for me to get back. And as you all know, I have a hectic schedule with 6 children. So I would appreciate if we can get those out. And if a commissioner does not respond to contact by telephone, things happen. Sometimes we can't get back. I know that I wanted to be at the security meeting, I couldn't because it was during the day. I wanted to be at the maintenance committee meeting, but I couldn't because it was cutting close in time. And so even for staff, Mr. Duffield, if y'all can take into consideration that some people work during the day and that all meetings shouldn't have to be during the day, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. And that's a perfect segue to our meeting date announcements. As mentioned earlier, tomorrow is a redevelopment committee meeting, Tuesday the 24th at noon at South First Street Community Center. And there is a resident services meeting on Thursday, August 9th at 1 p.m., as just mentioned. Don't want to forget West Haven Community Day, which is Saturday, August 4th from, I think, 10 to 6. Lots of things planned.
7 to 3. No, I'm not joking.
That was the cleanup. The
So why
cleanup
did she
was
tell
7
me
to
that-
3.
she
West
told-
Haven Community Day is 10 to 6.
We were in the planning meeting and she's, never mind. Alright.
Don't go to West Haven at 7 a.m. on
Please don't.
Saturday the 4th.
No,
Wait
it
till
never
10.
starts that early.
It never.
That-
There's a lot
when
of
she said
setup
that in the
has
meeting
to
the other day, I'm
happen.
like, why is it starting at 7 o'clock?
No,
But,
no.
That was the
alright.
cleanup.
The cleanup
That's
starts
cleanup.
early.
Gotcha.
West Haven Day is a little later, but it's always a lot of fun. And we will reconvene here on Monday, August 27th at 6 p.m. for our regular board meeting.
I just wanted to say, out of respect for the residents, normally I support Community Day at West Haven, but I won't be able to attend this West Haven Community Day. I have a wedding to go to, so if none of the other board can, if I can't be there, if some of the board can be there, that'll be fine.
Thank you. I also won't be able to attend. I promised my wife a date weekend, so if I don't go, I'll be sleeping on Miss Audrey's couch again.
You do what?
Okay. I hope to attend in the afternoon.
Seem to get along. Right.
Okay.
You get put out your house, you better find a hotel, bro.
No 50 million for that.
We now have the opportunity for public comment.
Oh, this will be real quick. Edith Good. I can't resist saying, when you reprint the resolution about the 50 or 20, or on the first whereas in second line, if you could add the word white between the and citizens.
Thank you, Ms.
What was that again, Miss Good? Can you repeat that again? Put it where?
So it reads, in 1954, via a referendum vote of the white citizens of Charlottesville.
Wait, I don't see.
I think that's historically accurate.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I promise not to talk a lot. Brandon Collins, I work for FAR, Public Housing Association of Residents. I just wanted to also support the idea of including the tenants' accounts receivable in the reports. A list of how many SUDs and how many pending evictions might be out there, and their repayment agreements. I think if you go way back, if you go back to prior 2016 and look at Finance Committee minutes, you'll find a format that I think Ms. Talbert was referring to.
Got it.
I like your roll-up summaries as well, but I definitely want that information as well. Really appreciate just the brief mention that public housing does not mean it's public property, and that's something that I think we all need to remember to abide by and support, and particularly when residents, stand up for their right to have their property. Residents are very particular about the housing authority staff coming into their house, and we expect the staff to not just come in whenever they want to. They certainly don't expect outsiders to show up on their property and cause problems, and they certainly don't want to show up and find somebody in their backyard. They certainly don't want to see their information posted on Facebook without being invited. $50 million. Okay, so I think y'all made a mistake, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm not going to argue about it too much. I think the point of the resolution tonight was to just get it in the pipeline for these capital improvement meetings and this discussion about the city's bonding for capital improvement. And I think it's really important that you have a statement from the housing authority, no matter how vague. Absolutely, if you're going to get a $50 million bond from the city, these details are going to be lined out. I think realistically speaking, just looking at the old master plan and putting a price tag on that, adjusted for the cost of things right now, you're looking at over $150 million for a total cost. So I think $50 million gives you enough to work with. So I think it's really important that we get this in the pipeline for those work sessions to get in the process of the city's CIP and bond thing. And I really think a resolution would have supported that. It would have opened up a conversation. And yeah, they're going to want the details. Of course, we want to give them that. There's an RFP, a developer will be selected, there will be pro formas, there will be site designs, there will be site plans, there is movement on all of this, and I really think it's up to all of us to share that with the public in general as much as possible at this point. I think we really have to just show that this is what's going on, but particularly to the council who's been asking for a product, and now we have a product. And I think while we're not all on the same page in terms of how the rest of this is all going to go, I think we're all leaning towards a process and starting to share a vision of the timing of overall redevelopment and the parallel track as we move forward. It's really important that money's going to go quick. Your equity fund, beautiful. If that money goes out the door starting in September, it's going to go so fast. I mean, it's going to hurt. It's going to be so painful. And, that $50 million, that's not going to cover everything. That's going to give us a way to fund the rest of it. And I think, you're right to ask for this stuff. You're absolutely right. The TIF, Water Street, I think it's really important that the council consider also West Main getting that tax revenue put towards bond financing and hydraulic. I mean, the impact from the standard and their tax liability, the impact of the standard on public housing is intense. And so if we can capture at least some benefit from that, from their tax revenue, apply that to bond financing, that'd be great. And then the small area plan for hydraulic also affecting our public housing neighborhoods out there. That's going to be huge. That's going to bring a ton of new tax revenue, not right off the bat, but down the road. And these are great things. If we can say, we can capture this, Charlottesville, it's time to do it. Let's do it. This is how we're going to pay for it. I think you'd be carrying the ball amazingly well. And just keep in mind, residents, particularly Crescent Halls, want a process that moves fast. That's why we're moving so fast on this stuff. That's why, we got a lot of work to do on relocation, but we're going to get there. And, the plan is there. And I really think it was a mistake not to pass that resolution. But as long as you get in the pipeline and have a process, let's get it done. All right,
so,
thank you.
may I respond really quickly? So public housing redevelopment is in the pipeline. So at our first retreat, I know my first retreat in 2016, we had to list our priorities, and that was number two or three in public housing redevelopment. So that's there, and then that's how we got the support for the money for the equity package. So we're in the pipeline now. We can expand that number from the 500,000 that we currently have to a higher number. Council just wants plans or whatever we're going to do. So I hear what you're saying wholeheartedly, and I think you and I are on the same page. We just may not have the same number, but we're on the same page. But I do want you to know, again, and all of us, that public housing redevelopment and money for it is in the pipeline. And I can promise you, as long as I'm on council, it will be in the pipeline.
And that's good to hear, and I think your board supports you, and I think the public's going to support you. I think our concern was that we really need to get in the CIP process now and start those conversations so it's directly in the CIP that we're talking directly about the bonds, and you know what?
The
That
bonding
might go for a
process
long
being in the
time.
pipeline is what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in
So,
that
all right.
process and get it rolling, and you know, we need some help.
So I
figuring some of
apologize.
that out.
I didn't quite under. So
No,
that's
no,
my
no,
fault.
no,
I
no, no.
didn't-
Yeah, we
The bond piece.
appreciate
Got you.
as much help as we can get, getting money, getting support, and we know you support, and hopefully you can get the rest of the council to fully support politically and financially. So
Yeah.
go for it.
Thank you. Are there other comments this evening?
Yeah, you done made me forget what I was gonna say. First off, I'm gonna give Penn, charge it to West's account.
My account.
Account.
The
on
50
account.
million
He has to pay for it.
See what you started.
Number one, Grant, I've already asked you, and I told Robin about the noise that's coming from my Miss Maybell's apartment. If you can get someone in there to look at that within the next day or two before it drives me and Miss Maybell crazier than what I already am anyway. And number two, I agree with you totally on the cameras. The cameras need to be put out. They need to be put on West Haven. I've asked for them when I lived at Crescent Hall, and finally, 6 years later, they finally get cameras in over there, which we totally need them. The lights on the side of the walls at West Haven have still not been fixed. And y'all said about a year ago, before the smoking policy went in effect, that y'all was going to be putting little things down with sand in it for people to put their cigarette butts in it. Well, now they're throwing them out in the street, in the sidewalk, and on the steps. So now we're having to look at the nasty cigarette butts out there, so something needs to be done about the cigarette butts. And you asked me the last time we was here about my window. Nothing's been done or anything done about the windows so far. So I don't know if anybody can be done about them without replacing the whole windows. So, yeah, I think that's all I had to say. I'm not for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to. Oh, sorry.
Please.
No, so I'd like to move that we go into closed session.
All right. We're not adjourned yet. There's a movement that we go into closed session. We have a brief closed session on our agenda tonight for consideration and discussion of appointment of officers to the CRHA board as authorized by section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks.